If sumo was the soul of the ledger, Venice was its armored body. Leave the sun-drenched plains of Mesopotamia. Travel 3,000 years forward, across the Silk Roads, to a city built on a swamp. A city that had no land, no timber, and no gold of its own. In the 13th century, the world was a chaos of diluted truths. Kings across Europe were doing exactly what modern central banks do today. They were clipping their coins. They were mixing lead into the silver and copper into the gold. They were stealing value by eroding the standard. But Venice understood something the rest of the world had forgotten. They understood that a city with no natural resources must possess something far more valuable: absolute purity. The Zecca was not just a factory, it was a fortress of arithmetic. Behind its heavy stone walls, protected by the feared Council of Ten, the Venetians engineered the world's first true global reserve currency: the Ducat. 3.545 grams of 997 fine gold. For 500 years that number never changed. Not through the Black Death. Not through the wars with the Ottomans. Not through the rise and fall of empires. While the rest of the world watered down their wine and their coins, the Venetian ducat remained a constant. It was a physical constant in a world of political variables. The Venetian Standard was the gilded ledger in its most disciplined form. It was the realization that trust is not an emotion, it is a manufacturing specification. To hold a ducat was to hold the word of Venice, locked in 3.5 grams of unyielding metal. Now, look back at the present. Look at the screens that flicker in your hand. In the modern era, we have perfected the art of the great dilution. We no longer need to clip the edges of coins or melt lead into the gold. We do it with a keystroke. We do it with quantitative easing. We do it by decoupling our reality from any physical standard. When a system loses its standard, it loses its soul. When the unit of account becomes a political plaything, the ledger becomes a lie. The bankers in Chicago and the committees in Washington believe they have outsmarted the Venetians. They believe the standard is an ancient relic. But history is a circle, not a line. Every civilization that abandoned its standard ended in the same place, buried under the weight of its own debased promises. We find ourselves once again in an era of chaos. The digital infrastructure is fast, but it is hollow. It is efficient, but it is fragile. In Chapter 11, we learned that truth must be difficult to destroy. Here, in Chapter 12, we learn that truth must also be impossible to dilute. The gilded ledger we are building today is the digital resurrection of the Venetian Mint. It is a return to a world where the rules are written in code and the supply is locked by math. It is a system where no Council of Ten and no Federal Reserve can reach into the kiln and change the purity of the output. We are building a new Zecca, not of stone and salt, but of energy and light. The noise of the failing system tells you that flexibility is a virtue. They tell you that inflation is necessary. They are wrong. The only virtue in a ledger is its stubbornness. The only strength in a currency is its refusal to change. Put down the diluted paper. Turn away from the flickering screens of the great dilution. Look back to the stone walls of the Zecca. Look back to the 3.545 grams of truth. It is time to inhabit the standard once again. Welcome to Chapter 12. Welcome to the return of the Ducat.